This week's Parsha is Parshas Devarim. Moshe Rabbeinu chazes over the mice of the Meraglim. So I want to start off with the Ramban in Parshas Shalach, Perek Yudalad Pasuk Aleph. The Ramban says, on the Pasuk, Vayifku ha'am balayla hu, va'amir Rabbeinu zal, heim bachu b'chia shel chinam, v'ani ekva lahem b'chia l'dayus. That Klal Yisroel cried for nothing, so I'm going to make them cry forever. Zok the Ramban, v'lo yadati mai zeh remez shebeparsha hitziu zeh. I don't know where Chazal got it from. Where does it say? It just says Vayifka ha'am balayla hu. Zok the Ramban, aval mikra molei hu vayimasu be'eretz chemda lo yhaminu l'dvarei vayiragnu ba'aleim lo yishamu b'kol Hashem vayisa yadei lahem lahapel oisam ba'midbar ulahapel zaram ba'goyim ulazoroisam ba'aratzis. So it's a beferish pasuk in Tehillim, Kapitel Kovav, Pasuk Chav Zayin, that the pasuk says, "Ulahapel zaram b'gayim ulazoroisam ba'aratzis." The pasuk is talking about the Meraglim, and it's saying that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is gonna put Klal Yisrael into Galus. So the Ramban says it's a pasuk in Tehillim, but it's not a mefurish pasuk. He doesn't know where Chazal got from that Hakadosh Baruch Hu was kaveh b'chiyah l'dayos. It sounds like Chazal knew it from this parsha. If you look at the Radak in Tehillim Kapitel Kovav, Zok the Radak ulahapel zarim b'gayim. It's not mevur in the Torah. And then he brings the Chazal of Vayifku am balaylahu leil tishabav haya amar kadosh baruch hu heim bachu b'chiyah shel chinam ani akvalem b'chiyah l'dayis ki b'tishabav charav habayis b'rishayna ubashniya. So because it was on Tisha B'Av, that's the b'chiyah l'dayis. So the Radak shtels to this pasuk the Chazal of Vayifka am balaylahu. So we have kind of a galgal achayzer. We have the Ramban saying it's not mefurish in the Torah, the Chazal, and he brings the pasuk into Tehillim, and we have the Radak saying that it's a pasuk on the pasuk into Tehillim. It's not mevur in the Torah, but you have the Chazal. So it's kind of what's going on. The Ramban is a starke kasha, and the Radak's kasha of where's the mavur in the Torah that Klal Yisrael has to go into Golus, that it's a gzer in the Golus. The Ramban later in Perek Yudalad Pasuk Chav Gimel says on the Pasuk V'chol menatzai lo yiruha that v'ulai yirmei zel l'dayros hagayla mimena. Maybe this is a remez that Klal Yisrael is going to go into Golus. Kedivei Rabbeinu B'kan kavalem b'chiyah l'dayis balayla azeh sheyizgalem ansha marishon. So the Ramban says ulai that it's mevur in the pasuk later b'chol menatzai lo yiruha, that whoever doesn't listen to whoever fights against Hakadosh Baruch Hu is not going to see it. So maybe that's the remez to Klal Yisrael, that if they ever are menayites in Hakadosh Baruch Hu, they get kicked out of Eretz Yisrael. Ulai, that's the remez, the Ramban says, but he's not clear. So what's get there for? So getting to our parsha. So first of all, there's a lot of chilukim between how Moshe Rabbeinu says over the mice of the Meraglim in Parshas Devarim to what it says in Parsha Shlach. There's a fascinating marsha in Tainus Daf Chavtes Amud Aleph Ayin Sham. We're not going to get into it in all the differences. I want to focus on the psukim pasuk lamed vav through pasuk lamed ches. So the pasuk before that says that everyone is going to imyira ish ba'anashim ha'ela adara ra'azeh, that no one's going to see. Zulasi Kalev ben Yefuna hu yirena v'lo yatenes haaretz. Kalev ben Yefuna will see it. Then Moshe Rabbeinu says in pasuk lamed zayin, Gam biyas anaf Hashem beglalchem lemor gam atol lo yisavei that Hakadosh Baruch Hu got upset at me as well. And then he says, Yeshua benona oimel lefanechu hu yavei shama oisei chazei ki hu yanchilenes Yisroel. So Kaidim Kol Daf and Verstehen is why is Kalev and Yeshua separated? So the Chizkuni asks the kasha, and Ein Sham what he answers. What's the pshat? It says Kalev ben Zulasi Kalev ben Yefuna. It gives a ganze Josh about Kalev. Then Moshe Rabbeinu is mafsik with himself, and then he says Yeshua ben Nun ha'ayim lefanecha hu yavei. Why didn't he put Kalev and Yeshua together? Why was he mafsik with himself? But the starke kasha on these psukim, which alle mefarshim ask, starting with the Ramban and everyone after him, that Gam bi hisanaf Hashem beglalchem lemor, that Moshe Rabbeinu says that because of the Ma'aseh Meraglim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu got mad at me, Gam ato lo yisavei sham, that you're not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So fact the Ramban, that what do you mean? Everybody knows it was for the Chet Mei Meriva. It has nothing to do with the Meraglim. And if you look at Parsha Shlach, it doesn't say anything about Moshe Rabbeinu. So what's going on over here? So the Ramban says, interesting pshat, that really Gam bi hisanaf Hashem beglalchem lemor is referring to the Mei Meriva. Nothing to do with the Meraglim. Just Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to put together everyone who's not going into Eretz Yisrael. So you guys aren't going into Eretz Yisrael, meaning the previous dar, and me also, I'm not also going, and it's all because of you. But really, what the Chet that's going on over here is the Chet of Mei Meriva, nothing to do with the Meraglim. As Ezak the Ramban, Ki ratza lahasker yachad einish kol hanimnoim me'avor ha'aretz. It wanted to say everyone who's not going into the land. Ki hakol b'gramas avayneseim, that it's all their fault. It's all Klal Yisrael's fault. So as they zak the Ramban, the Orach Chaim doesn't like this at all, because he says right afterwards the Torah continues talking about the Ma'aseh Meraglim. The pasuk Lamates v'tabchem asher amartem lavaz yiyeh. It's continuing with the einish of the Meraglim. So it doesn't make sense that Moshe Rabbeinu was mafsik with the Chet Mei Meriva. And then he says, the Ramban says that he wanted to put everyone together. Zok the Orach Chaim lo yadati ma hanoah yesh bazeh. What hanoah is there? Well, what hanoah is there to put everyone together, to lump everyone together? So the Kli Yakar says the most pashut pshat, which is what most everybody would think, if not for the Ma'aseh Meraglim, then Klal Yisrael would have gone into Eretz Yisrael right away, and there would have never been the Ma'aseh of Mei Meriva. They would have never had to complain about water. They would have gone in right away. So because of you, the Klal Yisrael had to be in the Midbar for 40 years. And Memela, if Klal Yisrael is in the Midbar for 40 years, now there was a malkum for there to be the Chet of Mei Meriva, and Memela. So Moshe Rabbeinu was just saying that because of the halach yelech, Memela, I'm not going into Eretz Yisrael. That's the most pashut pshat in the pasuk, but it's not so mashma Gam bi hisanaf Hashem beglalchem lemor. It's that HaKadosh Baruch Hu got upset. So the Orach Chaim says a moedik pshat, which a lot of people I think know, that the pshat is like this. He brings the Chazal, the Gemara in Tainis Chavtes, which we already mentioned from the Ramban. The Ramban brings it in Parsha Shlach. That by Yifgo Am Balaylahu Kavu Bechia L'Dayus Kilel Tishbav Haisa Shabai Nechrav Abayis. Right. Then he brings a famous Gemara that it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. He doesn't say where it is, but the Gemara says, no, sorry, it's not a Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Yud Aleph. He brings a Gemara in Saita Daf Tes Amud Aleph, that the Gemara says that like this: Rananu tzadikim ba'Hashem la'yisharim nova sehila al tikrei nova sehila ela nova sehila ze Moshe v'David shelo yisholtu seineihem b'maiseihem. That when Moshe and David, anything they did, nobody could be shaylet on it. And it says, Moshe, the Amar Mar, Misha Nivne Mikdash Rishon, Nignas Ayel Mayid, Krashav, Krasav, Ubrichav, Amudav, Adanav. That anything Moshe Rabbeinu built was nitzchias. It was forever. So Zok the Orach Chaim, Memela, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Mizmar la'asaf elikim bo gayim b'nach lasecha. So the Medrash in Eicha says, Mizmar la'asaf. We're talking about the Churban here. It's not a Shira. It should say Kina. Zak the Medrash in Eicha. Al shehishlech hamasai al eitzim va'avanim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu threw his anger on, instead of Klal Yisrael, he threw it on the binyan, on the Beis HaMikdash. So Zak the Arachayim a Pashta Cheshbin. If Moshe would go into Eretz Yisrael and he would build the Beis HaMikdash, it's Nitzchias. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't be able to destroy it. So what would happen? HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have to destroy Klal Yisrael. So because of this, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Gambi Asanav Hashem Beglalchem Lemar," that HaKadosh Baruch Hu got upset at me is because there was a gzeira for there to be a churban bias by the Meraglim. Memela Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. So it was because of Klal Yisrael that they had this gzeira of this galus. Memela they couldn't go in. Memela Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. If he would go into Eretz Yisrael, then Klal Yisrael would get destroyed. So it was because of them. He says, we find by the Mei Meriva, that's really where it happened. That's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvua that Moshe Rabbeinu can't go in. Zok the Arachayim Moedik. He says that if Moshe Rabbeinu would have done what he was supposed to do by the Chet of the Mei Meriva, Klal Yisrael would have gone back to the Madrega of that they wouldn't ever, the world would have come to a tikkun. And Memela HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have been matir the shvu of Moshe, and they would go into Eretz Yisrael, and they would Moshe Rabbeinu would be able to build the Beis HaMikdash, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't have to destroy Klal Yisrael. So I just wanted to stel zu Bavusta Meshech Chachma, which I say over by Shabbos table a lot, that what would have been the Kiddush Hashem so great by the Mei Meriva. So the Meshech Chochma in Parsha Shlach, in Parsha Chukas, says that what was the Greis Zach by Matan Torah? He says that Klal Yisrael went up to such a madrega. We don't really understand what it means, but they were able to see hakolos. They were able to see voices. The Dibur was going around. So this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted by the Mei Meriva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that the Dibur of Moshe, that was the Shechina Medaberes Mitach Greinish of Moshe, that Klal Yisrael should see it payalais in the Sela, in the rock, and it would come to the same madrega as Matan Torah. It would be such a chizuk of emunah. He said they would reach that same madrega that they reached by Matan Torah. Now, so what was the Chet, Zak the Meshech Chachma, that Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to tell Klal Yisrael to prepare themselves, prepare their eyes. The Dibartem el Asala le'neihem sheyachinu eineihem, he says, that they had to prepare their eyes. But Moshe, because he got upset, he forgot to tell them, Moshe Rabbeinu, because he got upset, he forgot to tell them to prepare their eyes. Memela, they weren't able to see the kailas, and Memela, they didn't come to that madrega. So this Meshech Chachma stims very geschmack with the Arachayim, that what was the Kiddush Hashem that Klal Yisrael could have came back to the madrega of Matan Torah, where they were on the spitz level, and there was that they would have come to the Tikkun Ha'olam. So as they zogt the Arachayim, I saw that the precious Drachim brings a medrash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, Im ata nikbar kan etzlan b'schuscha heim baim imach. That one of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe was that I need you to be buried with the Meisei Midbar in Chutz La'aretz, because only then will they get Tchias HaMesim. Will that dar get Tchias HaMesim? So the Welt asks on this medrash, what's the shaychus between Moshe being buried there and that dar HaMidbar having Tchias HaMesim? So Zak the precious Drachim, very similar mahalach to this Arachayim. He says, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Asher nishbati be'apiyim yivayinu al menuchasi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvua that the Dar Midbar is not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, and they're not going to see Menuchasi, my Beis HaMikdash. They're not going to see the Beis HaMikdash. But Zakt the Precious Drachim, Moyedik, Ga'inus, he says that in Nedarim, the Gemara says, Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph, that if somebody says he's not going to have Anah from this house, Hamuda Anah mi Bayezeh, and then the house falls down, and you build another house right there, then Avada he can have Anah. He's allowed to have Anah. So he says, Mamela the Zel Bazach, if Moshe Rabbeinu would have gone into Eretz Yisroel, then he would have built the Beis HaMikdash. That dar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvur, they're not going to see the Beis HaMikdash. So they wouldn't have Tchias HaMesim. But since Moshe Rabbeinu did not build the Beis HaMikdash, and Mamela, the Beis HaMikdash, is now able to be destroyed, now Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go into Eretz Yisrael. He didn't build the Beis HaMikdash. It's not the same Beis HaMikdash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said they're not going to see. And therefore, now that dar could have Tchias HaMesim. So it's a very similar mahalach to the Orach Chaim, that it all has to do with what Moshe Rabbeinu is what if he would have built it, the Beis HaMikdash would be Nitzchias, and Memela, that dar wouldn't have been able to have Tchias HaMesim. Very similar mahalach. The Precious Drachim, that's the Mishnah Melech, he says on that medrash. So I want to be Moisif a little bit on this Orach Chaim. There's a Hafladik Tanchuma in Parshas Vayeshev, Ois Dalet, Zogta Tanchuma, Amar Yeshua ben Karcha, Af Hanerois Sha'ata Mevi Aleinu Ba'alila Atamevian. Even the Neirois, the Moedik Zachen that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings them Ba'alila. I'm not sure how to translate Alila exactly, but kind of like a trickery, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings that. Zogta Tanchuma like this, Bayurei, Keshabar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Za'ilam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, Miyayim Arishon Bara Malach HaMavis, he created the Malach HaMavis. And the Medrash goes on, and really the Torah was written 2,000 years before the world was created. And so Zakt Adam Arishon, the Torah says Adam Ki Yamas Ba'ayil. So obviously you HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you thought there was gonna be Misa in the world. And now you're blaming it on me. You just found an alila to blame it on me, but really there was supposed to be Misa the whole time. The Malach HaMavis was created. It says in the Torah, Adam Ki Yamus Ba'ayil, that a person's going to die. Now, here's the clincher. Here's the words. Zok the Medrash. V'cheinat ha'moitzei, sha'amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, Em yireh ish ba'anashim ha'ela hadar ha'ra hazeh es ha'aretz ha'tova. That's the pasuk before, pasuk lamed hey. Em yireh ish. In our Parsha, Hadar Zak the Medrash, who's Ish? Ish, Zeh Moshe. T'chsev v'ha'ish Moshe anav. Ish ha'mesuyim ba'anashim, Moshe is the Ish. So the Medrash is saying, B'shasta Meraglim, Zak the Tanchuma, Im Yireh Ish ba'anashim ha'ela, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you Moshe, you're not going to go in. That's Mefurish in the pasuk. That's what the Medrash is saying. And he says, V'cheinu Aimer, you also find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, all the way back in Shemais, Ata Sira Asher Esa Lefare. This is also Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, you're going to see now what I'm going to do to Parah. But Mechemes Parah Ataraya, Ve'ein Ataraya, but Mechemes Shleisha Ve'echad Melachim. But you're not going to see the Mechama of the 31 Melachim. And once Moshe Rabbeinu said, Shimuna Amayim, Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lachein Lo Savius HaKal Hazeh, now you're not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. Heavy Noira Alila. This is a Moyerdika Alila that HaKadosh Baruch Hu found, because really it was already before. It was already gezakt before twice that Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So Grada, I want to stell to this Tanchuma, that you find Moshe Ish Zeh Moshe Dechsev Ish Moshe Anav, that the Medrash Rabbah in a bunch of places calls Moshe Rabbeinu an Ish also. The Medrash Rabbah in Parsha in Devarim Rabbah Beis Parsha Beis Ois Beis says on the pasuk in Tehillim B'teichachos al Avain Yisarta Ish Sagt the Medrash Rabbah, Ayadei Avin Echad Shahaya Biyad Moshe Sheichiach Es Banecha V'Amar Lahem Shimuna Amayim. One Aveira that Moshe had, that he was Meichiach the Banim, that he said Shimuna Amayim, Yisarta Isai V'Eichachta Isai V'Ein Ish Ela Moshe Shenemar V'Ish Moshe Anav Ma'id. So again, the Devarim Rabbah says that the pasuk in Tehillim which says B'Seichachos Al Avin Yisarta Ish Ze Moshe, that it's referring to Moshe. Then last week I came across a Moedike Medrash Rabbah in Devarim, all the way at the end, Parsha Yud Aleph Ois Yud. It's mamish kedai to go through it. It's very easy to read. But Teich Dvarav, he says that the pasuk in Eiv that says Asher b'yadei nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol b'sar ish ve'ein ish ela Moshe. Moshe is the ish. Shenemar va'ish Moshe anav ma'id mikol adam asher al pnei adam. And there's also one more place. There's the famous, by Yisroel it says vayishalu ish l'ri'eyu l'shalom. So Rashi brings over there Eini Yedea Mi Anikra Ish. Who's saying hello to who? Zok Rashi Ish Ze Moshe. So a bunch of places where you find that Ish is the Moshe. But Lamaisa, what we're saying from here, from the Tanchuma, is that Noira Alila, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Yira Ish Ba'anashim Ha'ela Adar Razeh, he was mamish referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. That was a gzeira on Moshe Rabbeinu by the Meraglim, that he should not go in to Eretz Yisroel. If you look at the Balaturim in our Parsha on this pasuk, he says, Ish Ba'anashim Ha'ela, those three words, Ish Ba'anashim Ha'ela, Soifei Tevais Moshe. The end of these, each word, the end of Ish is a Shin, the end of Ba'anashim is Mem, and the end of Ha'ela is Hey. So that it's Mem Shin Hey. So Shagam Hu B'chlal HaShvua. Moshe Rabbeinu was also B'chlal the Shvua. And the Tanchuma goes L'shitase, because in Parshas Miketz, Ois Tes, the Tanchuma says, Teda Sharei Moshe Nigzer Alav Shaloi Likanes La'aretz V'loi L'Oisa. Moshe was Nigzer on him that he shouldn't go into Eretz Yisrael, and not even to see it. Where does it say in the Torah not even to see it? By the Chet of Mei Meriva just says he shouldn't go in, because it says in our Parsha, Yira Ish Ba'anashim Ha'ela, that's what the Eitz Yosef brings, that's what the Bir HaAmarim brings, they all bring this. And the Tanchuma Grada says, Val Shehirba B'Tfila, because he was Marba B'Tfila, Ksiv B'y V'Yareu Hashem Eskal Ha'aretz, that Hashem gave in on something. Hashem let him see the land, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvua Yira Ish Ba'anashim Ha'ela. Lefi this medrash that the Gzeira was taka on Moshe Rabbeinu also. I saw Mordechai Kazach in a Sefer Binyan David that he brings, that the medrash says Shlach na, and Shmoitz Rabbah, medrash says Shlach na biyad tishlach biyad malach, that Moshe Rabbeinu said send it not with me, biyad malach. What was Moshe Rabbeinu saying? That Moshe Rabbeinu chapped that he is just the ish, and therefore he's not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Im yira ish ba'anashim ha'ela adar ra'azeh. So that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, Shlach na biyad tishlach, that I'm not going to go in to Eretz Yisrael, so send it biyad malach. That's what the Sefer Binyan David uses this Tanchuma to say pshat in that medrash. Now, a lot of times that what it says beferish in the Tanchuma, the medrash Rabbah hints to it. So if you look at, there's a medrash in Bamidbar Rabbah Parsha Yates Ois Hey, that the medrash says like this: Moshe Rabbeinu was trying his hardest for 40 years not to be makbid on Klal Yisrael. He was scared from the shvua that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. He was scared from that shvua. Well, how does this refer to Moshe Rabbeinu? Why should he think he's included? But according to this Tanchuma, the Medrash is saying very geschmack that Im Yira Ish Ein Ish El Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu chap that this shvua is referring to him also. So the Medrash Rabbah is saying the Tanchuma, but much more beremes. We had that last week in Chumash also that the whole shtickle of that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Baal, that was also from a Medrash Shecher type. And the Medrash Rabbah also, Reish Lakish said something, but he was just meramis to it. He didn't say it, but Peh Molech. So I saw Amal. There's a Moedik Argadal Yo that he explains what was Ata Sira. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu punished? How did the Einish work of Ata Sira that you're only going to see now? The Mechama of Pare, but you're not going to see the Mechama of the 31 Malachim. So he says the Moedik Gazach. He says, the Gedal Yishar says that he has a whole arichas here, but he says that there's Dal L'Shainis of Geula. The Balaturim brings that these Dal L'Shainis of Geula, Vaytzesi V'Yitzalti V'Galti V'Lakachti, are connected to Dalad Malchias. But he says, really, if you look at the Midrashim, the Dalad L'Shainis of Geula are connected to Dalad Gezeris that Pare was geyser. And the last one, what was the last one? Tichbar Ha'avayda al Anoshim, that the Avayda should be so bad. So Gedal Yishar says that this Gezerah was the Gezerah that was supposed to end off the 400 years of Klal Yisrael being in Mitzrayim. But what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu cried out to Hashem and he said that Klal Yisrael can't handle this. They can't do this. They can't continue with this. So what happened is that these Dalad L'Shainis of Geula, instead of being only Keneged the Dalad Gezeris, is they ended up being Keneged the Dalad Goliath. Because really what was supposed to happen was Klal Yisrael was supposed to finish the Avodah in Mitzrayim 400 years and then have the ultimate tikkun. And they were supposed to, that was supposed to be the end. But since Klal Yisrael cried and Moshe Rabbeinu said that they can't handle the Avodah, they can't handle this Gzeirah Revius, so it turned into Dalad Malchus. There was a Gzeirah of Golus over here. That's what happened. Because of Klal Yisrael complaining, so there was a Gzeirah of Golus. And that's what you find. You find that the Midrashim say, the Mechilta says, I'm not sure where it is, but he says, Kol ha-Golius nikraim al Shem Mitzrayim, shebekula mitzirim es Yisrael. But the amkus of this Mechilta is that all of the Golius that we have is because of what happened in Mitzrayim. That because Klal Yisrael came out early, Memela, we didn't finish our job. We didn't finish what we had to do. So Zakter Gedal Yashar, Memela, Mamish very similar to this Arachaim, that Ata Sira is that it was Muchach Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. Because of this, because Moshe Rabbeinu said Klal Yisrael can't handle it anymore, Memela we had to go into Golus. If Moshe Rabbeinu would have went into Eretz Yisrael, everything would have been Nitzchias, and he couldn't, and we wouldn't have been able to go to Golus. So Ata Sira is not that it's a einish on Moshe Rabbeinu, it's that it's Muchach. You can't go into Eretz Yisrael, because if you go into Eretz Yisrael, then it's going to be Nitzchias. Which is, mamish, what we're saying over here. Va'ish Moshe, Emira ish ba'anashim ha'ela, Moshe Rabbeinu was, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvua by the Meraglim that I can't let you go in. I can't let you go into Eretz Yisrael because of what happened by the Meraglim. Because there was a Gzeira here for Golus. There was a Gzeira here for a Churban. I saw that the Reb Yitzchak Sorotzkin, he brings from Reb David Soloveitchik and Tainus Daf Chavtas Lamed Aleph, that the Chazal say, Kavasem Bechia L'Dairis, right, which is referring to the Churban Abayis, but he says Avada, the Churban Abayis and Golus are all one and the same. He brings a Lashon, a fascinating Lashon from a Medrash Rabbah in Bamidbar. The Medrash says, Umin Isa Shah Nigzer al Beis Hamikdash Sheyechrav Kedei Sheyiglu Yisrael Lebeina Umais. Right, that the Churban was so Klal Yisrael should go into Galus. So it's all one and the same. The Galus and the Briskirav and Parsha Shlach, he says the same thing. He says at the end of a shtickle, he says, "Mishum de be'emes gzeres dar amidbar ugzeres hagalus shal achshav shneim ka'achas nimru b'shvua achas." That he calls it gzeres hagalus. It's a gzer of galus. This Churban, that this bechia that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was keveya, is keveya a bechia l'dayus of galus. So Memela Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go in. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go in because there had to be galus. So he couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael because everything he would do is nitzchias, which is mamish the same thing as Ata Sira. Now the Tanchuma is amazing. The Tanchuma that's putting the two things together, the two different klalos together, is there's Ata Sira and Yireh Ish Ba'Nashim Eila, that they're both, it's not because of Moshe Rabbeinu. It was really because of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael had this gzeira of galus. Memela Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go in. So Lefizeh, Meken Zogin, that the Ramban and the Radak were bothered. Where does the Torah say that Klal Yisrael is going to go into galus? Atem bachu b'chia shachinam v'ani kaveh lechem b'chia l'dayis. Where does the Medrash? Where does the Torah say this? Where is it mefurish? But if you learn like this, Medrash Tanchuma, it's Moradik. Because Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that's beferish in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to go in. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu not going in? He's not going in because there's a gzeira of galus. So this is where Chazal got it from. That Chazal knew that Moshe, that there was a bechia l'dayus kavua over here. There was a gzeira of galus over here. Because that's why Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. That's the only reason why Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. So I wanted to say, Ulai, Lule de Mustafina, that it could be, we asked last week at Kasha in Chumash, we asked that if Moshe Rabbeinu was Baila de Matranisa, if Moshe Rabbeinu had a din of a husband of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol, so then why wasn't he just made for the Shvuah? And why he's able to be made for, just like we find he was made for other Shvuahs? Why wasn't he made for this Shvuah? Ulai, the pshat is because Enechanami, maybe he could have been made for, but it wasn't because of him. The Shvuah was because of Klal Yisrael, because there was a gzeira of galus. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a shvuah that Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. Even if Moshe would have been mefer, Klal Yisrael still would have had that gzeira of galus. And that gzeira of galus, Moshe Rabbeinu, if he would go into Eretz Yisrael, would ruin it, and Klal Yisrael would have to be destroyed. L'maisa, lefi what we're saying, it's very geschmack, the halach relech of the psukim. Because there's a Ramban, which I didn't see the Olam Shtalan, but the Ramban in Parsha Shlach, Perek Yudalad, Pasuk of Dalad, the Ramban, the Pasuk over there also separates Kalev and Yeshua. It says them separately. Zok the Ramban, it doesn't even say the schar of Yeshua. It just says that Kalev is going to get Ekev Hasiruch Acheres Imai, right? He's going to get to go into Eretz Yisrael. Zok the Ramban, why didn't it say Yeshua? Zok the Ramban, Uschar Yeshua Einei Roi Lefarshe Ata Sheyiyahu B'mkay Moshe. That Yeshua is going to be instead of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe, it's not Roi to say it over here that Yeshua is going to be instead of Moshe Rabbeinu. But now the psukim makes so much sense. What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, Kalev ben Yefune is going to get something. Gam bi esanaf Hashem beglalchem lemor. That because of you, that there's a gzeir of galus, I'm not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. Memela Yeshua ben Nuna aimil lefanecha hu yavei. He's going to get his schar of the Ma'aseh Meraglim. So it's all together. That is his schar. His schar was, Yeshua's schar for not doing what the Meraglim did was that he's going to get to take over Moshe. How could that be his schar that he's going to get to take over Moshe by the Meraglim? Who said Moshe is not going into Eretz Yisrael? Because Gambi is of Hashem Glachem. Already then, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that Moshe wasn't going in because there was a gzeira of galus. So Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go in to go into Eretz Yisrael. Yashikayach.